everyone. Oh, there we go. Hey, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. There's my sign over there. I am trying out a new platform here called Ecamm, and so that's my first note for you. But I'm so excited to be here the very first day of IMEX. It's Smart Monday, and I'm here to talk to a very smart woman right here. I actually didn't even ask you how to say your last name.
Yush Sztalkoper.
Yush Sztalkoper. And we're going to talk about how to create space to opt out, why true belonging goes beyond what's on the plate. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, Yush, please tell everybody what you... click here. Okay. Please tell us what you do and where you work.
What I do, so I actually have 20 years of corporate events background. About a year and a half ago, I left due to being completely burnt out. I know a lot of people can relate to that. And really, this journey started with parenting my neurodivergent son. About 4.5 years ago, I started to notice challenges and struggles that I didn't have the answers for, and so it just took me down this completely different path. And so now I'm in the neuro-inclusion space, and obviously having spent so much time of most of my life and career in the events industry, it made sense that I brought this new lens of understanding humans through a neurodivergent lens to our industry. And so I'm really excited about being here with Tracy today because I actually talk about neurodiversity in a lot of different contexts. I think in contexts that a lot of people assume we talk about. But, food is a huge part of it. And it's a huge part of, for me, not just logistics and feeding people and connection. It's actually all about regulation. And so much of what I've learned through the neurodivergent lens is actually how important our nervous system is to how we end up being able to show up as human beings and being able to connect, to learn, to be able to, be ourselves. So yes, I am really excited to be in this really tight little cubicle.
Exactly.
We are literally like all over each other, but it's amazing, and excited for what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, I interviewed a woman who posted on LinkedIn about being neurodivergent. She's an attorney, and it was about drinking, but it has so much more to do. And she mentioned too, like the food and beverage aspect of it, because you want things in place in specific places, or some depending on what your neurotype is. Thank you. Food might impact you a different way. Yeah. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. I think the way that we historically as an industry has thought about food is at the event, how are we feeding our attendees? How are we nourishing them? How are we creating experiences to connect them, right? Like networking oftentimes is around meals. To me, the way that we need to think about food and neurodiversity and events is how do we understand these people as individuals, and what are their biological and physiological needs that start before they even ever show up. And so when you start to think about design from that perspective, you start to understand that, okay, different individuals have different needs, so we can't create one menu for everybody.
Right.
I get it. Scaling is one of the hardest things that we all encounter. We have so many great awareness and solutions, but then we think about it and we're like, well, I still have to feed 10,000 people. How do I do that without having to personalize menus for everybody? And so the way I think about it is, and what I've discovered in the past year and a half, and maybe even longer, 4.5 years, because once I realized my son was neurodivergent, I was diagnosed with ADHD about 1.5 years ago. So I've been able to really make sense and connect the dots to my experience as a planner. And also as an individual. And so now I realize what we need to think about is, well, how does that person, do they feel comfortable being in this meal space? Do they feel like they belong because they have options?
Right.
Maybe they have special dietary needs, right? And this goes above and beyond just like, oh, I have an allergy or I have a sensitivity. This is, what does my body need? How do I find comfort in the things that are familiar to me when I'm wired in a way where everything feels unsafe or everything is already harder for me to navigate. Another thing I think about that is related to food is even like some people who may not have the social skills, who are neurodivergent, they show up and then they have to find somewhere to sit and they have to figure out if they didn't come with anybody, right? So when you think about the energy levels and the efforts that a neurodivergent individual has to go through just to have a meal, there's a lot of things that can drain the energy and then make it feel really unsafe even to be in that space, much less eat the type of food that potentially they can't eat.
Right.
And so when you start to think about that, there are all these layers of complexity that I think reveals for us a blueprint for how we should think about food very differently, right? Above and beyond logistics and an opportunity for people to connect.
Well, and picking, I want the Mexican meal today and I want the deli platter tomorrow, right? And just putting that food out. It's so much more than that, like you said. So are there tips and tricks that you have to, that you've seen in ordering food for a large contingency of people to meet these needs, to help individuals across the board?
So one of the things I discovered is that when you design from the edges, you create an experience that benefits everyone.
I love that phrase, from the edges, because mine is like, if you design for the minority, you can feed the majority.
Yes. Yeah. It's the same concept.
Yeah.
But what I find is that neurodivergent wiring and needs and struggles and challenge, whatever you want to call them, they're signals. It's almost like the canary in the coal mine. They are signaling to us that these things don't work. And it is obviously at a much more intense level for neurodivergent individuals than for neurotypical, right? There might be an individual who's neurotypical, doesn't have any of these issues. That's great. I'm glad they can navigate this experience more regulated and not drained. But if we design something for the neurodivergent individual who will be drained by this and will struggle, then we are helping them create a completely different experience. And then when you think about it, that neurotypical person, they're going to gain back energy that they actually didn't even think they needed to use.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Right? They're like, oh my gosh, this is great. I love having options. I could have done without options, but the fact that there were, oh wow, and there are whole foods being served. Like, there's whole fruits and there's like vegetables and I can see what the labels are. So it's very clear to me. I don't have to second guess. Oh, actually, I know this is really good for me, like protein heavy. I'm huge on protein. Ask David Stevens about this. But protein is such a nervous system regulator. And I get it. From events perspective, we sometimes are at the mercy of a budget and logistics and what's easy to serve on a mass scale. But when you think about I really think food is our ability to prime our attendees to have the best experience at our events,
right?
So that they can learn, so that they can connect, and so that they have the energy to sustain however long the conference is,
right?
So they can keep showing up, right? And being able to be their full selves and have the capacity to do all these things that they're meant to do when they're on site. And so when you start to think about food as a priming agent, it completely shifts like how we see it as sort of a means to an end, or or just another networking opportunity. So that's why I think if you design from the edges,
right,
you benefit everyone, because I don't know anybody who's going to complain that they had too many choices, or that the food was labeled clearly, or that there was whole foods being offered, right? So does that point make sense?
It does. Well, it also reminds me of eating healthier is eating around the edge of the grocery store too.
Yeah.
Because that's where all the fresh food is.
Yes.
And instead of going into the middle with all the prepackaged
processed foods,
multi-processed foods. So there's a couple of words that you've used in there. Regulation. And what was the other one? The nervous system intervention. So regulation to me, in my context of food allergies and things, is laws. But you're also talking, I think we could apply that to the word law as the laws of our body. So can you talk about that, what regulation means in that sense?
Yes, absolutely. It's so funny because I talk about regulation purely in the nervous system state that I didn't even think about your regulation. But I think you're right. And I think it's important to explain and give people language for
Mhm.
understanding these sort of relatively new terms, because then we can make sense of it and then
Mhm.
we start to understand why it's important. So our nervous system is responsible for how our energy, how safe we feel.
Mhm.
Nervous system is really our ability to be able to show up as ourselves. And so our nervous system is essentially has two states: safety or threat.
Okay.
This is a survival system that our ancestors have had in order to stay alive, so that
Mhm.
they didn't get eaten or so they didn't,
Right.
get killed. And that nervous system is grounded in how do we survive? We do
Okay.
things that make us feel safe, make us feel comforted, right? That are familiar. And what is unsafe are things that make us feel uncomfortable, stressed out,
Right.
anxious, right?
Mhm.
And so when you think about nervous system, everything we do above and beyond just food we need to help regulate it in order to be able to do the things that we need to show up authentically.
Right.
And so from a food perspective, regulating that is just one aspect of it. And it because there are foods are not all created equal, and
Right.
we do need certain foods to help us regulate our nervous system. So when you think about it, to me it's like one strategy in a multitude of strategies that we need to regulate our nervous system. So when you eat foods that make you feel safe, and you don't have to go out there and like find the right foods, make sure there aren't ingredients that are harmful for
Mhm.
you, and then making sure that you're not in an environment that makes you feel unsafe or feel like you can't be yourself.
Right.
That's all dysregulating. And so that's
Mhm.
why when you design food and you design that eating experience and you design choices and options, you are creating safety.
Well, and I love that because a couple of months ago during Food Allergy Awareness Month, I interviewed Amanda Whitehouse, who's a psychologist, and she was talking about the exact same thing. And so we have to design so that we're helping our attendees feel safe no matter
Yeah.
what. And you've mentioned a couple of things that to me go into the same context of food allergies and other dietary restrictions, labeling, right? And providing options, because I posted something. It says, "Hey, don't make sure." Oh, it was posting about in my newsletter. I sent a newsletter out, and make sure the vegetarian option is not the guacamole or the
Yeah.
condiments, right? But providing options, because those are just ways to make people feel included in that meal function.
Yeah.
So many different ways.
We talk about people feeling seen as a safety thing,
Mm-hmm.
and offering the food choices and the things that everybody might need,
Mm-hmm.
is making them feel seen. Wow,
Right.
you're accommodating my needs
Right.
without me
Yeah.
asking for it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And another thing that you mentioned that I kind of want to touch on is right now, food restrictions, dietary requirements,
Mm-hmm.
or allergies are all around sort of a very imminent threat.
Right.
Like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
if you eat that thing, you might die.
Right.
Or you
Mm-hmm.
eat that thing, you're going to break out in hives.
Right.
And what the difference between what we're solving for and thinking through a neurodivergent lens is this is not imminent. You don't see it on the surface.
Right.
But underneath, it's doing a lot of damage. Right? So
Yep.
because we can't see what we can't see, we
Mm-hmm.
can't name it. And because we don't name it, we think it's not something that we need
Right.
to address.
Yeah.
It's not a problem.
Right.
And so this is essentially the like the core of my work,
Mm-hmm.
is that I really truly feel neurodivergent brains and wiring and needs and all of these things. It's a signal
Mm-hmm.
for people to start paying attention to things that we might have not realized really mattered before,
Mm-hmm.
but over time it is so important, because
Right.
we're talking about human thriving and human connections
Mm-hmm.
and all these things that we're trying to achieve,
Mm-hmm.
that is built on feeling safe,
Right.
having food choices,
So,
all these things.
based on your lived experience, your personal experience with your son and you, how have you seen food in thinking through this and providing these options? A difference in him and a difference in you, and in your attendees.
I mean, it's changed our lives.
Yeah.
I biohack now.
Okay. What does that mean?
So biohacking essentially means that you test various things to see if they work for your body or not.
Okay.
And so you're essentially personalizing nutrition, diet, exercise, well-being. I mean, it's not just food and exercise. It's also mental health, so many things too, right?
Right.
It's essentially understanding what you need as an individual and then creating solutions around your unique needs. And so complete opposite of one size fits all.
Right.
Everybody, even, I'm not trying to knock on people who give really good healthy advice on, oh, these foods are healthy for you. Even healthy foods can be harmful for somebody who is biologically and physiologically not wired to be able to receive that in a healthy way. So my son and I both have histamine issues.
Okay.
We just thought we had a lot of allergies, and come to find out, when we've done genetic testing, so I actually have insights and data that we use to kind of customize, and we work with professionals, by the way. I'm not doing this on my own. We work with naturopaths who take a more holistic and integrative approach, and they help guide us on thinking about what do we need to test, what are our deficiencies. There are 2 D words that I love that has sort of guided our biohacking experience, and it's deficiencies and detoxing.
Okay.
The reality is our world today is full of toxins.
Yes.
We are getting them from every which direction, not just what we eat.
Yeah.
Not just what we eat. We're sitting in a box full of toxins right now.
Right, yes, exactly.
But so that's why detoxing is important. There are some things that we can't control. What we can control is what we try to eliminate from our bodies, right? You can accumulate these things, but there are ways to get rid of it. How do you optimize your body then to get rid of those things? You eat healthy, and you eat foods that are naturally detoxing. You ensure that you don't have deficiencies that prevent certain pathways from taking place in your body that helps you optimize your health, your detoxing and breaking down nutrients. Because supplements are great, but they're one size fits all typically. And then you take these supplements and you're like, well, why isn't it working? Well, because you took something that was created for everybody, and your body is not for just like everybody's.
That makes sense.
And so what I've seen in my son especially, and more so in him because it was so extreme, was incredible behavioral shifts.
Oh, wow.
Just, and what we realized is all these toxins that he couldn't get rid of in his body, and he does detoxes now with me, obviously monitored with the naturopath.
Right.
And the toxins that were in his system were neurotoxic. Wow. They were literally affecting his brain.
Interesting.
And so when you think about behavior, when you think about all these things that neurologically is responsible, and nervous system wise is responsible for how you then react and respond and how you act, all of those things shifted because we started addressing things at the root. Right. And I started with him because there was an urgency in supporting his needs. And then I saw how effective it was, and I started working on myself. And so he and I are on, because genetically we're quite similar, he and I are on very similar supplements and nutrients and lifestyles and diets and detoxes. My younger son is more like my husband, so he doesn't even eat the same things as us.
How do you manage the making dinner then?
I spend a lot of this is why I had to quit my job, guys. I spend a lot of time actually focusing on food. The amount of time that I focus on food, and I'm so glad that you invited me to this, because it's actually, I want to say it's like 50% of my time I spend on food, nutrition, lifestyle, exercise, like all these things that are core to what we need as human beings to thrive. Right. Because the reality is we live in a world now where there's so many external stressors and toxins and things that are making it hard for us as humans just to exist. Right. We have to do, the burden of the work is on us. We have to do so much more to be able to stay healthy these days. And so, I spend a lot of time cooking. I spend a lot of time grocery shopping on the edges of grocery stores. I actually go to multiple grocery stores to source what I need. We're just so intentional about what we eat, how we eat it too. Right. Just like when we eat certain foods, like in the mornings, my son starts with protein. We do not do carbs. We do not do sugar. We eliminate some very obvious things. Right. added sugars, preserved, any processed foods, ultra processed, forget about it. We don't touch any of that. And we don't do seed oils. It's like when you start to add up the things that you shouldn't consume or shouldn't do, you realize that it's better to focus on the things that you can.
Right.
You can eat whole foods, you eat organic, you eat vegetables, you eat, foods that you make. And so I know a lot of people don't have time for this, and this is I think the hardest part around being humans these days. Most people don't have the time.
Right.
Nor the resources, nor the capacity to be able to do what I do. And this is why I'm like, my purpose is to translate this and turn this into ways that maybe other people can benefit from what I've learned.
Well, and two, it's like taking one or two steps of those things and trying them out and doing them first, and then moving forward. And then as you can do, then they get incorporated overall in an overall well-being daily process, right? And part of your overall being. Now, have you seen an environment or an event that has done this really well?
I just want to add one thing to what you just said earlier, because you're 100% right. I have ADHD, which means I'm very intense. Everything I do is like 110%. So even with supporting my son and myself, I dove in head first and was like in the deep end.
As a mom does.
Yes,
right?
And because I was like, there's a sense of urgency, but it's also the reason why I've been able to do all of this and see such fast progress is because of the way I'm wired. So I have a lot of strengths that enable me to do this. And I want people to recognize that I love the point you made, because you can make a tiny change now. And those little micro changes, I call everything micro, because I realize not everybody can do everything the way that I've done it, at the speed that I've done it, at the intensity that I've done it. But these micro things, resets, micro shifts, micro changes, micro habits, whatever you want to call them, they all matter. And exactly what you said, when you do them over and over and over again, you start to build healthier habits. You start to actually rewire not just your brain, but your body. And you're creating the conditions for you to be able to add on and do more.
Right.
Just like we create negative habits and patterns, the same works, but it takes more intentionality and effort to be able to do that.
Right. Yeah.
So I was, IMEX is obviously huge. I think they did a great job last year. I remember going to the snack section where they have all the snacks set up, and there were healthy options. There were like vegetables, right? There were whole foods, things that weren't, fried or cooked or packaged or, covered with sugar. Right. And it like literally makes me so happy to see that. Another event that really stood out to me is the Skift meeting forum last year at the Glass House. Every single food item that they served was healthy. I mean, I saw things that you don't normally see, right? There was like green juices and chia seed pudding. I mean, all the things that I love. Right. There was a lot of protein, and the foods weren't just covered in sauces. Right. And so when you start to think about, and there were lots of choices, and everything was clearly labeled. I felt really great being able to eat something that wasn't just nourishing, but it felt like I had the options. So a lot of what I talked about earlier was like clear labeling. Right. There are food options. There were things that I could eat. And, a lot of us go on site and we're like, oh, I'm just on site at an event. I'm just going to have a cheat meal. No big deal. This is just one. But we are asking individuals to come to an event and show up with energy and attention and focus and all these things. It is critical that they're being fed these foods that enable them to have the energy, to have the focus, right? To be able to do these very hard things that we're trying to cram in and all of it. So I actually think events even more so, because if you're at home and you're regulated and your routine is pretty standard and you're feeling safe in your environment, that actually might be when you should have a cheat meal. Right. Because it's all about balance, right?
Right.
Like, I love French fries, by the way.
Yep. So good.
Just my weakness. I don't eat it all the time, but I'll let myself have it. But when I do, I'm very intentional about making sure I work out afterwards, or that I've eaten healthy throughout the day, so that it's not a shock to my system that I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just adding on another layer. Right. And so there's just a lot of intentionality around eating. And so I think it's very important for organizers to think about planning not just the menu, but the experience and the options and all of it. But it's also the individuals. I mean, I'm curious if this is something that we could think about as an event industry. How do we educate people more on not just like this overarching education around nutrition and well-being,
Right.
but hey, helping them understand this menu that I curated for you. Here are all the things that I'm addressing. The protein helps you regulate your nervous system.
Yep.
The vegetables, you get your vitamins that give you the energy that you need. Whatever. Like, to me, there's so much of what I do is backed by science, because I realize that's how I make sense of things.
Right.
And it helps validate that, you know what, these are real things that we need to understand and address.
Yeah.
And I think most of us think that way. We don't have a lot of capacity to sit here and go, convince me. It's like, oh, science. Well, that's pure fact and data.
Right. Yeah.
So how do we believe that and then be able to help people make informed decisions around what they eat?
Well, and I think it comes down to, because typically as a planner, right, you go to a hotel or a convention center and here's the menu, right? And like check off the box of what you want. Here are the options that we have. And you really, there's no information necessarily from, I'm sure there are venues that do this, that like, hey, we've curated these menus to help your attendees be engaged. Or that's a secret menu that you just have to talk to the chef about, right? And it would be really great if our partners in this had already done that, right? And I know MGM, offers that in their, I forgot, I'm going on a tour tomorrow and I'll know the name of it. But on the specific section of their hotel, right? The sleeping rooms, the food and beverage that they serve. But then you also have the other menus that they have. So it's really figuring those out. And I wish our industry as a whole, because food and beverage is probably our number one expense. Meeting planner is the number one expense.
Yes.
We need to use this as a tool versus just throw it at us.
Well, I think when you start to understand how core it is to human regulation and thriving, it starts to show how important it is to prioritize.
Right.
And I think historically we haven't understood it on a deeper level of the importance. And, my work is all grounded in sort of a holistic approach, because as human beings, we are complex. We, at the root level, we have so many needs: biological, emotional, neurological, right? Physiological. So how can we just address one or two of those things and think that it's okay for humans to show up and be their full selves? We talk about authenticity a lot, and all of these things actually contribute to that. How can we eat the foods that actually are a part of our identity?
Right.
And so that we don't have to feel like we're giving up another piece of ourselves. That's not really who we are.
Right.
And absolutely, I think there are incredible partners and people in this space who are already doing great work. And thank you for obviously spotlighting such an important topic. But we could definitely do more. I'm not seeing this as a mainstream. I feel like this is sort of an ancillary conversation.
Right.
That, hey, some people who get it are doing it. But how do we create almost like a model or a prototype for understanding what does neuroinclusion look like, feel like across everything that we design for events? And that's why, now I coach and I consult and I help think about strategically like what we need to consider that we historically haven't.
Right.
And that to me is where the key lies. How do we zoom out so that we can understand the bigger picture and this holistic need of humans? But then how do we do that by actually zooming in to understanding what it is that individuals need? Right. And then being able to kind of connect those dots and design. And that's why I think through the neurodivergent lens is the key. It's almost like the blueprint, because these individuals have the most extreme and intense needs. And they are essentially telling us, here's how you need to design for everything. Yeah. And if we follow that blueprint, we create experiences that benefit everybody.
That's amazing. Yeah. And when we do that, and we're here at an event with 17,000 people, right? And no matter what the size of it, even if it's a 20-person board meeting, right? How can you help those people participate in that board even more, right? And thinking through those details. One of my friends years ago does lunch and learns for clients, and he, after talking to me, he sent different menus. He sent the vegan menu and the gluten-free menu and the regular menu to everybody to pick their meal. And one of the gentlemen was a new client, and he said, "Thank you so much, because I usually just eat the lettuce that's underneath the tomatoes, the leftover after the sandwiches," right? And that, to me, that's a neurodivergent, not only just a need as a being a vegan or a vegetarian, but that's a neurodivergent need of wanting to participate.
Yeah.
And David just taking that one step of sending 3 different menus helped that person participate fully in that event, and he became or not in that lunch and learn, and he became a good client. So
well, and what you've touched on is he felt seen.
Right.
He was like, somebody cares enough about addressing my needs by giving me options.
Right.
And before, and if you, one of the things I'm hearing for what you just said is that individual never felt safe to ask for something.
Mm-hmm.
And
very true,
that's the very culture we need to change.
Right.
I think one of the things you and I talked about before when we were deciding, what to focus on for this topic, is that some people don't even feel safe asking for something because
Correct.
we haven't created the space to tell them that, hey, if you have a special dietary need that isn't covered by vegan, vegetarian, or kosher, whatever,
right,
it's still okay to ask for it. And I think
right.
we also talked about how we changed the language. Instead of saying,
yeah.
what are your dietary restrictions, I'm very intentional about words and language, because restrictions has a negative connotation.
It does.
And it puts the onus on the individual to raise their hands and say, I'm sorry, but I have a special need and I don't feel comfortable sharing it. But then if I don't get to eat what I need to eat, and then I don't have the energy. I mean, can you imagine eating a lettuce on a busy day when you're meeting and you're supposed to show up with your thinking caps on and be able to learn and absorb and have the energy to sustain yourself? And I'm just like, oh my gosh, poor guy. So this is, to me, a fundamental shift that has to happen in this industry, which is, we need to create psychological safety, period. But even just around food choices, the fact that somebody can say, I feel safe enough to ask for something that is not typically offered because I matter as an individual.
Well, so there's 2 things that come to mind on that. So Tahira, who's in charge of programming for this, and her intention, her book that came out, not the most recent one, but the one before, but intentional design is really not only designing the event overall intentionally, but also looking at the food, being very intentional with what we're doing. And when you do that, you don't have to accommodate because you've already designed it for everybody to be there and thinking about them. And I lost my other thought.
Well, I can finish your thought on the accommodations. Is another word I don't like.
I know I don't like it at all.
My son has an IEP at school, and there are 2 options. You could get a 504, which is all about accommodations, and then an IEP, which is more sort of services and support. And the reason why I don't like accommodations is, even with accommodations, the expectation is still on him to know what he needs, and to just help him in a few areas that doesn't really address his whole person. And so accommodations, to me, in the workspace, in the professional space, within an event, all these things puts the onus on the individual to say, I need to be treated differently.
Yes.
I have a special need. I have this extra dietary requirement, all these things. And that doesn't create belonging. That actually does the complete opposite, right? So you're making somebody feel like they are different again, but in a way that could be harmful. And so I agree with Tahira. When you design intentionally and when you design from the edges, what you create is these things that really support the individuals who need it the most. And then, like I said, benefits everybody else.
Right. Because you're never going to, I'm going to use a food allergy thing, but you're never going to know that there were peanuts eliminated from the menu. right? You're never going to know that pineapple was completely eliminated from the menu because you're allergic to it, right?
Right.
And it's not going to impact your experience because that was eliminated from the menu because of someone else's need.
Right.
And
it's just not there. And
right.
then instead you're like, oh, wow, I got this really healthy,
right.
healthy whole food options. And it's not deep fried and coated in sugar and all the sauces.
Exactly. Well, and I just remembered the other one was, so there was a conversation on a Facebook group 2 weeks ago about accommodation, making dietary restrictions available, but even just physical disabilities, how do we plan for them? And I wrote this wording in there, and because wording does matter, and it says, how can we help you fully participate in this event? Please check below what we need to, how we can help you fully participate, right? Yeah. And it was visually impaired, hearing impaired, dietary needs, whatever it is. And then we do need to follow up with those people.
Yeah.
And walking here today, this completely off the mark here, I was walking down the sidewalk, and coming up right in front of the hotel is this big orange barrier across the sidewalk. And to the left was the street, which is Las Vegas Boulevard, and to the right was gravel or big rocks. And I'm like, how is somebody supposed to get past that if they have, utilize a wheelchair or can't walk? I don't want to step in Las Vegas Boulevard, right? Yeah. But that's the same kind of barrier that we put up when we don't label and when we don't plan, intentionally design our events.
So there's an example that we hear often. It's called universal design.
Yes.
And universal design, the example that most often comes up is that when wheelchair ramps were created, were built, it benefited not just people who were in wheelchairs, but moms with strollers, or people who had shopping carts or anything with wheels that was easier to take up a ramp. And so that's why universal design is so important, because when you design for the people who need it the most to ensure that they have a similar experience and accessibility, you end up benefiting all these people that you may not have even realized needed to benefit. And so that's why designing from the edges, like some of these individuals might not have dietary requirements and might not, realize that they need to eat more protein, but when they do, they feel better.
Right.
And then they are also going to benefit from the nutrition and the whole foods and all of it that's going to enable them to even learn and engage and be able to have the energy too. And so what's the downside to that? Right? So we kind of level set for the people who need it the most, and then we actually amplify and accelerate, amplify kind of the things that were already people were already doing fine with, but then we just make it better. And so there's really no downside to thinking about universal design and designing. Universal design is great, but I do feel like the neurodivergent lens needs to precede the universal design, because it gives us the blueprint. It's like, hey, how do we design for the extreme needs? And then we view it and execute it through a universal lens. And then the benefit is for everybody.
That's awesome. Okay, I have a couple of rapid fire questions that I'm going to ask you. Where did my little list go here? Okay, coffee, tea, or water?
I don't drink coffee. Tea has a nutrient called L-theanine in it, especially if it's green tea, and that is actually calming. And so for me, I'm always going to pick tea. Water is absolutely necessary for hydration. Sorry, you're never going to get any rapid answers out of me. Water is absolutely necessary for hydration, but it needs to be fortified with minerals. And so we are just drinking all this water, and water is not created equal. And so, tap water can have harmful stuff in it, toxins. And so I think if it's the right form of water, it can be nourishing, hydrating, all these things. Right. And I think green tea would be amazing. It has L-theanine in it that really helps everybody. And coffee can help with cortisol levels in the morning, especially. And so people who are drinking like 10 cups of coffee, maybe, so it's all about timing. But I think I can't say one answer, because I think universally and I think holistically and I think about everybody. And so like somebody could benefit from coffee. But me specifically, I always pick water.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Awesome. What's your go-to comfort food when you need peace?
Comfort food. Oh, I'm Chinese. It's always noodle soup. Noodle soup just brings me home. It's it's familiar, right? Oftentimes,
not ramen noodles, or
it could be any noodle soup.
Okay,
it could be ramen, whatever. But it's the comfort factor, and it goes back to our nervous system. What makes us feel safe?
Right.
And oftentimes, if you start to think now about what foods bring you comfort, there's probably some sort of safety associated with it.
Right. Awesome. What's one small action that a planner could take tomorrow to help guests feel they belong?
I think empathy applies in so many different ways, not just to how somebody else is feeling, but also what somebody else's needs are. So I think as a planner, one of the biggest skills and tools that we can have is using our empathy to understand if I'm designing something for someone else, what may they need that I haven't considered? Because oftentimes, because of so many external factors, we tend to design through a tunnel vision because we're like, okay, I need to meet the budget, timeline, venue, blah, 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 all these restrictions. We almost start reacting from there. And I think to be truly proactive, we have to take a zoomed out lens and think, how do I design for individuals who have a variety of needs?
Right.
And that to me is only possible through an empathy lens, right? Like truly understanding, and also through a human lens.
Yeah.
What does another human being need? And how can I create that for them?
I love that. Thank you. All right, final question. Finish this sentence.
Okay.
Every meal should.
Every meal should have protein. It really is. I start every meal with protein because a lot of the crashes that contribute to, a lot of the foods that contribute to crashes is sugar and carbs. And sugar and carbs are not necessarily bad for you. We all know we need a lot of carbs for energy, right? So I'm not saying cut out carbs, but I'm saying eat it in a very strategic way. Eat your protein first, then your fat, and then your carbs and whatever it is that you need. And so there you go.
Thank you. All right. Well, I am putting up your website on here, but is there any other way that they can get a hold of you?
Everything is on my website. I would encourage you to check it out. There are all kinds of amazing information on there, and I will start finally writing a blog where I will dump everything that's in my brain onto something where people can access and be able to refer back to.
Okay, and her website for those listening and not watching is NeuroSpark Plus spelled out .com. So neurosparkplus.com. Well, Yush, thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, this is such a great conversation.
Yes, it was a great conversation. I really appreciate it. Everybody, thank you for joining in. If you're listening to this on the replay, please chime in, add comments and questions to it, and Yush and I will get back to you. Share it to people who need it. And until next time, which will be tomorrow, same time, same bat channel, please join us. I'm interviewing my friend Trevor Liu on why to go to Toronto as a food destination. So until then, stay safe and eat well. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.